All right. I mean, this is really a lifelong topic, isn't it? We just need a lifetime to talk about this. So we were talking with the table leaders this morning, and between us, we had 400 years of marriage between all of us. There's, I think, 13 of us, and 400 years walking with the Lord. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. We're waiting for Miss Faith. So what I wanted to do with our panel this morning, instead of interviewing maybe an older woman, I wanted to have some of the younger girls come up, and I'll let them. You don't mind telling us your age, do you? No. That's like true millennial right there. Do I need to say anything else?
I was like, nailed it.
Yeah, we're done now. Okay, so I'm going to introduce them, and then I want you guys to ask questions. But I want to hear. I want to know. What I want is the conversation to start, because I want to hear what they're thinking, what they see as the difference in our generation, their generation versus some of the generations that have gone before. What maybe they think about being mentored, and who they want to mentor them. And then I want you guys to be asking some questions too. So start with Krista there. And why don't you guys just tell us a little bit, tell us if you're married, how long you've been walking with the Lord, your age. La, la, la.
Hi, my name is Krista. I am 32 years old. I have been walking with the Lord since I was 10, and I am married, and I've been married 4 years.
Hello, my name is Brittany. I am 27, and I have been walking with the Lord since I was about 21 or 22.
I'm prepared. Hi, I'm Jessica. I am 33. I have to think about it. See, I'm a senior millennial. Like I'm on the brim there. Oh, thank you. I am married. I'll be married 7 years this year, and I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, so pray for me. What was that? Oh, and I've been walking with the Lord since I was 19.
Hi, my name's Faith. I'm 28 years old. I've been saved all my life because my parents are awesome. But I started walking with the Lord when I was 10, like really walking with him. And I've been married for a little over 2 years, and it's been awesome.
Oh, yes, and I'm not married.
Oh, yes. We're pretty sure she's going to get married or have to go to Africa and be a missionary, right? That's just, yeah.
Pray for me.
But we'll come visit you.
They all say that.
They all say that. Does anyone, just start off the questions. If you have questions, stand up, and Gloria will run over to the microphone with you. And while I knew there was going to be one right off the bat.
I don't want to stand up, but one of the things that came up at our table is that this generation seems to think that the roles in marriage and motherhood are not delineated like they were when we grew up. In other words, mom took care of the children in the home and those responsibilities, and dad went to work and was the provider and everything. Now it seems that mom expects dad to do her job, or what we would consider her job, as well as taking care of those other responsibilities. So how do you feel about that? Is that something that you agree with, or how do you deal with it?
Hi. It's funny, we were just talking about this at our table because we are a part of this generation of women that have that sense of independence is like a major thing. I know in my home, my mom raised me to be independent, and that she worked full time, and I didn't need any kind of man to fulfill, any kind of need that I had. And so I really did struggle with that early on with my husband when we were dating, because I did feel like I could do it all and achieve everything, and what's a man going to bring to the table and all of that. But I think the Lord really turned my way of thinking when it came to being married and my husband and learning what that looked like. Like, I didn't know what that looked like, to be a wife and to submit to him and be the homemaker. And I still struggle. Like, my house is a mess half the time. And that's partially because I have small children and we are busy and whatever, but partially because I think other things are more important when they're not. My home is number one, and my spouse is number one aside from the Lord, and then my children. So I think it's just been a learning process. So I do desire that. But then there's that part of me that fights it too, because I was raised differently than that, Anybody
else? I think that's part of what you say, June. I think that's part of the older women in this room of what we can bring to the table for you guys, is because we ourselves have struggled with that. I know my generation, same thing. We were talking about the women's lib movement at our table and how that affected me, like thinking, oh, I don't need a man and I can do this and I can do that. And then you get into the role of the Bible and you're like, wait, I'm called to be a homemaker whether I work or not. I'm called to manage the home. And so I think just resetting that view. Now, some of them grew up with awesome Christian parents, and so it's different than that. So, Brittany, why don't you speak to, because you didn't grow up in a Christian home. So how has the Lord kind of like just changed maybe your thinking in that realm a little bit?
Yes, it was actually really interesting. When I was around 21 or 22, I started going to a women's Bible study, and they were all older women, and I was the youngest. And I remember seeing everyone with wedding rings on, so I thought they were weird. Because I grew up with both my parents. I had step-parents, so I grew up in two households, so I grew up with four parents, and then they all got divorced, and all my friends' parents were divorced, so all I saw was divorce. And I had my heart broken, so I was like, I never want to get married anymore. I don't want kids. Like, this, I just had this whole view, so I didn't know what I had walked into this Bible study. And then I heard the women mention submission, and I got a little annoyed, and I was like, you need to show me that in the Bible, because y'all made that up.
We would never make that up.
I'm like, where did that voice come from?
I was like, I know, right? Is that God? And so they laughed at me a lot, and they were just so nice and patient, and they just started to walk me through the Word and show me, and they invited me into their homes and showed me what their homes with their husband looked like and the way they raised their children. I had never, ever seen anything like that. And so from there, not only being walked through the Word, but seeing it actually lived out and seeing how distorted and how much the enemy came into my home and destroyed it just because my parents didn't know, because they really were trying their best. So it was a mix of not only learning the Word and getting to know who Jesus was, but seeing it practically lived out, and the women were really transparent and real with me.
That's fantastic, because what you hear in her heart is, I didn't formulate this opinion. I didn't just come up with, it's based on what you had seen and your experiences and what had gone on before. Another question?
Okay, you beautiful ladies are kind of like the pioneers or the frontiers of social media, okay? And I have the little ones. My daughter's 12, and she's about to, embark on puberty very soon. One of the things that terrifies me as a mother is social media like Instagram, and I know you guys, I've seen you guys on social media, and I believe you, Faith, have a large following. There's a lot of competition between young girls and identity crises going on. How do you, as Christians in this day and age, deal with that, and at what age do you feel is appropriate for a young girl to even embark on that, as young children are?
Yeah. That's a great question. So Instagram, and that's the beauty of being a millennial is interesting, because we know what it's like to play outside without internet. And we also know we were on the cusp of the digital age coming in, and social media was on the rise. And so you have this way of connecting globally with people, and it's so much power, and we don't know what to do with it. So thank you for bringing that question up. I think having a healthy social media presence has to start with having healthy IRL. IRL is millennial Generation Z talk for in real life. That if there's healthiness in the home, conversation is happening, there's openness in your relationship with your kids, that's where it all starts. And when it comes to, there is a lot of fear because you need to be aware of the kind of world that your young people are stepping into. And a lot of young people are losing touch because they're being raised by social media, not their parents. And that goes both ways. That could be because they have too much idle time that they do it, or they're also being enabled into this as well. So as parents, and me, one day hopefully becoming a parent, like I want to think about how can I be so involved in my kid's life that they know they can come to me and run to me and talk to me, so that like there is a healthiness in how they communicate. Because a lot of young people are losing touch in social media, they don't know how to communicate with their parents. They would much rather stay in their room and text you while they're upstairs and you're downstairs, right? Isn't that scary? That should be a red flag. So let it start with a healthy IRL, in real life, healthy in real life relationship with them. And then, because my parents had that with me, my social media presence became something where I can be transparent without oversharing. I knew how to be safe because my parents would tell me and coach me. It's like, hey, maybe don't post about this. Maybe do post about this. And there are really cool apps and ways for you to even put parental controls on their phones, which I strongly suggest because porn is so easy to get nowadays. Sometimes it's just on Instagram. Sometimes it's just on Twitter. There's a lot of fear there. But also coddling them could cause them to just find other outlets that are just as unhealthy outside of those things too. So just get a little bit more informed. I'm still trying to keep up with where everything's happening. So as far as an age, what I like about Instagram and Facebook is that there is an age limit there. But I also suggest that wherever your kids are, also be there too. Make a profile. You don't have to be on it all the time, but there's a little bit of a presence there, so there's a little bit of parental fear, which is great, and it causes them to have to be like, oh, my parents are also on social media. And they can go on private, but don't allow them to go on private, have their private profiles if you can't access it. That's just, so make sure that you're able to access it. Sometimes even like ask for their password and stuff. Just some simple little practical things. You can talk to me personally if you just need a little bit more insight on that. But let it start in real life. Teach them how to talk to people. That's where it all starts.
We're actually going to have a workshop on social media before our next study in fall. So the week before fall, we will actually have a workshop just specifically focused on social media, because we need more than one little, tidbit of information. When I was talking to the girls earlier, they were talking about that this generation are watchers. It's not so much that they're engaging because everything is watched. It's video, it's social media, it's pictures. So when they're looking at older women, they're watching. It's not so much that they're engaging in talk. They called this generation, your generation, you called it non-engaged, non-verbal, all visual. Everything is visual. Do you have any, do you want to speak to that a little bit? Do you have anything to say further on that, or?
Yeah, when it was brought up at our table, it really is that, the question that we were addressing was, how would you receive admonishment from an older woman? Like in what manner would you receive it the best, And for me, it really is seeing that fruit in that woman first and foremost, We hear it all the time, you can't give what you don't have, right? And so sometimes, I know for me growing up, it was hard for me to receive an encouragement, an exhortation, a rebuke from a woman that I see is not even walking out those things that she's rebuking or encouraging me in. And so that is kind of the generation that we're living in. I talk to the junior high leaders, the high school leaders, it's the same thing across the board. I don't know how to talk to them. They're not really talking. And I'm like, don't worry about that, but they are watching. They're watching and they're listening. And it should kind of kick in a very holy fear in our hearts, like we're being examples whether we know it or not. And that could just be our relationship with one another, our relationship with our family, our husbands, our friends, what we say, what we don't say, all those different things. And it's one of those things where we've learned, especially like Faith and I who've been a part of like a youth discipleship program, and Brittany who's at the Bible college, and Jess who's raising children, like you'll be surprised like how much they actually see in just you. Like what is that quote that said like preach the word and if necessary use words, right? That's literally this generation now. And so they're just watchers and listeners, and they might not respond up here. They might actually look dead in the eyes a little bit. Like,
No, they kind of look like this.
yeah, but they're really good at kicking, like just picking the whole room up immediately the moment they walk in, so.
Good answer. Next question over here.
I was just going to ask, kind of following on the meeting that's coming up about the sex ed and how our world is so sexualized. I think you two didn't grow up necessarily in Christian homes. How did you, I mean, obviously you're very modest now, and how did you, how did you keep from kind of following along, or did you and then you changed? I mean, how did you miss all that nonsense?
I played sports, so I was just distracted a lot of the time with that. I just kept busy. And my parents were they were modest people, which I find interesting now looking back. But they were, it was more of a fear for me. Like I was afraid of the unknown, and I was afraid of anything that had to do with like, the unknown of it. So I really never even had a conversation with my parents. I don't even remember what was taught at school. I just learned from my friends, and we had these weird conversations, and then we just moved on, and which I think is going to happen no matter what generation it is. But I didn't have a healthy conversation with my parents. I did go down a road later in life. I think maybe that I would have chosen differently had I had some direction. But so I hope that answers your question. I just kept busy and talked about it with my friends.
Mm-hmm. In high school, they pretty much taught us how to get an abortion if needed. They taught us how not to get STDs and what to do if you do get it. And they showed us weird pictures. So when I was in college and I decided to start having sex, in my mind I was doing a very good job because it was one person and I was always very serious about protecting myself. And so compared to my other friends, I was doing a great job. And I didn't know any better. I knew that people would say you should wait until you're married. And in high school, I used to think, I'm gonna wait until I get married. But that just wasn't a reality for me. And so that was the life that I lived. And I remembered once I started going to church right after I graduated college, and just the different things that I was learning, the Lord was doing a work in my heart. And I can even look back now to high school and to different situations that I was in and see how the Lord's hand was on me, because there was so much darker that I should have gone into by the situations and positions I put myself in, that I walked into, and the Lord was right there with me, and I didn't even know him. He truly did love me at my darkest.
Wow, that's fantastic.
I have a question. I have a 14-year-old, and I always telling her, up to you're 18, I'll keep bringing you to church. How do you keep those kids when they are 18? What advice do you give so that they get encouraged to keep going to school? Is it good to be pushy parents and tell them, and keep telling them, come to church with us, come to church with us? Because that's what I see when they turn 18, is when they just choose not to come to church. And for you, Brittany, when you're talking about going to college, was this a secular college? Because, I have family that this boy was really devoted to God. He went to a secular university, and he's way on the other side because all the subjects. So it's scary for kids, young kids out there.
Oh, that's loud. I'm sorry. So, yeah, to answer the first part of your question, after the whole 18, right? The statistics are so scary because they say 56 or 58% of church kids walk away from the Lord after they graduate high school, which is staggering. Honestly, I know for me, I'm a result of a woman pouring into me and giving me ownership in ministry. And that's what kept me in church. That's what kept me in fellowship. That's what molded my mind to ministry. Like this woman, I was 17 when I started getting discipled by her, and she was 24, 25. And the first thing she did was she wanted to know what my life looked like. And after that, we were just in youth group together. She's one of my leaders. And then she started to see things in me and then started to trust me with ministry, whether that be setting up tables for our youth group or coming alongside her as she led prayer or whatever. And that kept me in church, honestly, was when my church became my church. Not my parents' church, it became my church where I felt like I was a part of the body and I was functioning as a member. A lot of the times is the reason why they walk away is we have currently, even now, I'm sure, we have members of the body that is inactive. Like, think of our body right now. If we had an inactive member of our body, so we'd be sick. We'd be, we'd be broken. Like if we broke a toe, for instance, we'd be in crutches. And it's the same thing. There's young women, young men in our church right now that may not have been given the opportunity yet, and they're an inactive member of the body, and so they'll exit the body because they're like, they don't need me, And so I think that's honestly a big part of it. And I went to a university that was Christian. It might as well have been secular, to be honest with you. And the reason why I remained with the Lord was that upbringing. The upbringing in ministry, the upbringing in church, knowing that my church family was my family and they got my back, and I knew to a certain extent it was I'm representing Christ and I'm representing my church body as I'm here as a college student. And that's honestly, I can't think, besides the Lord's grace and his faithfulness in my life, that's what kept me grounded.
Because of the testimony of my parents, I had no excuse to walk away from the Lord. I had no good excuse to walk away from the Lord. Because my mom, I'm gonna cry because she's awesome. Because of my mom and my dad, though they had full-time jobs outside of church, fully involved in their community, they served in church. They volunteered. They were never paid once. My parents have never been in vocational ministry, but they served the Lord full-time. They disciple people. All my life, I saw them in ministry. My mom would bring me to her worship team practice, and I'd just sleep in the sound booth. I'm like, why am I here? But I'm watching, kids sleeping in the sound booth. I'm watching my parents serve the Lord. Not just telling me to go to church, but they'll bring me to church. They'll drag me to church. But they will show me the joy of serving God. So let that be, if there's fear in you about pushing your kids, push them. Push them. Bring them, but also show them. Show them the joy of loving Jesus. Show them the joy of serving Jesus.
There's a few things that we do as a church strategically. One is that we bring, because those statistics are staggering, and a couple of years ago we took a walk with that as a church leadership. So that is why our high schoolers are in the sanctuary. We strategically try to get our high schoolers to serve. You'll see them on the worship team. You'll see them on the cameras. For that very reason, serving is the thing that makes you a family member. When you pour into the family that you are a part of, you become a member. And so here, we've taken strategic steps. So our high schoolers are in the sanctuary because what happens is sometimes they're out in youth group and they're playing Chubby Bunny and they're doing all the games, and then they don't know how to come in because they don't know anybody in here. And so we've strategically taken those steps to help them make that transition into adulthood. But as a parent, I can high five these girls. You need to show your kids how to serve, and then you need to have them serve. We went to our kids early on, even 10 years old, and said, okay, this year we want you to pray and find out where you're going to serve in the church, because you're going to give back to the family that you're taking from. And I think that that is one thing. And then we took our kids everywhere. If we went on a mission trip, our kids were there. Our kids also slept hours in sound booths. But they know the people of the church. They know my friends know them. And it kept them in the body. So I hope those were helpful. But that was an excellent question. Other questions?
It's a little bit hard to ask, but I know that we have like formalized mentor programs and that kind of thing, and I think maybe at least a couple of you have come in, like as we joined, had cross culture come over and all that, and just kind of wanting to know what your feel has been for even in the informal fellowship with women that are older. Have you sensed it being open, and what can, I hate to say do better, but where do we need to let the Lord take us in that, so that, because I know, I mean, in our time here, I know I have a good feel for what the heart of the church is. It's open arms, but sometimes we don't always know how to do that. And what can we do better, I guess?
Feed us. We're broke. Just kidding. No, but seriously, I remember one of the coolest things when we first started, the merge first happened, Pastor Darius, and I call Ate Emily, Ate M, Darius's wife, M, invited us over for dinner. And because they're Filipino, we're like, oh, this is normal. But then we realize, like, oh, you tricked us into discipleship, you know? So invite us over for dinner, or go out to coffee with us. Food is just a great way to get to millennials nowadays, because we stress eat a lot. So if we can stress eat with you and you just pour into us, that would be so nice and so helpful. And it doesn't have to be like a thing we sign up for at the Connect kiosk. Just invite us on a Sunday and like, where are you gonna go? What are you doing after? Oh, you wanna go out to lunch? Just some simple stuff like that.
Just honestly, be yourself.
Yes.
Like, it is the most awkward thing, and I mean this in the most loving way, for seasoned women to pretend that they're my age. I'm like, stop. There's a reason why we love, just honestly, like I like love the women that are in this room just as you are. And that's like even people who are younger than me, like high schoolers, they'll say the same thing. Like, just be, to me, like stop talking like us. Like, I know you don't know your link. Like, I get it. But it really is, like, there's such a...
I have an IRL.
In real life, just be you, because the Lord will, as your heart and your prayer to the Lord is that, if that is really your desire, the Lord will you will attract someone, because they're on the same end. Honestly, they're just like, I need this, this pillar, this woman, this wisdom, and the Lord will just make it happen. Like, he'll ordain those things. But as you being you, amazing women who have walked faithfully with the Lord for years, like, that is what we need. And as we see genuinity in that and authenticity in that, like, it's a done deal.
Jessica has something to say, but then Brittany, I want maybe you to talk too, because a lot of times we think as mentors, like, we're just waiting for someone to come and say, oh, will you mentor me? But maybe you could talk to how we can reach out to you as well. But
well, I was actually gonna say that, because I desire to have that mentorship. I desire older women in my life, seasoned women in my life. It's like having little ones. It's like you feel like you're kind of drowning and you're in this alone and you don't know what you're doing. And so to have that guidance from somebody who's been there and who has had a relationship with the Lord for so long, Faith, I think, hit it, like, just inviting someone to lunch, like, just inviting someone to coffee, because I do get like that, where I'm like, I'm not going to go up to some seasoned woman and be like, can you mentor me? Like, yeah, like, I need help. And, because I do have this mentality of like, oh, she's really busy, like she probably doesn't have time. They have so many things going on, and so I think it would be really helpful. Can we have coffee sometime? Can we just have a conversation and just get to know one another and see where you're at? So.
Oh, can they hear me? Oh, to reiterate what Faith said, food. That is a big thing. And I'm going to get to Brenda's question. But I remember, because I know the secret, and I tell my friends at the Bible college, you don't need to go to young adults. We have that all the time at the Bible college. Go to the grown-up ladies. They have food. And it's like real food, and they have homes with couches. Like, go to what they're doing. But, yes, so for me, at my church, I'm originally from LA, so my home church that I came to know the Lord in was Calvary Chapel Inglewood, which was like a really small church, so I was the only young adult. I didn't know what fellowship or anything was, so I only had the older ladies. So they tackled me, we're gonna disciple you, and I didn't even know what that was. And it was great because I didn't even realize it was something I needed, and I think a lot of the young adult women, they just try to look for where they're supposed to be, and they think I'm supposed to be in young adults. So I've mentioned my other home church is Calvary Chapel South Bay, and I've mentioned to just church leaders that I would recommend some type of merge between the young adult women ministry and the women's ministry where they come together, and it's kind of like a discipleship program of a sort, and then the young adult women merge with the high school, and as they're learned through the Titus 2, they're pouring in, and then there's always this bridge so that after high school, the girls know where to go. You go into the young adults and you get poured in, so just kind of a flow. I would strongly recommend that because a lot of young girls don't even know really what discipleship is. They don't really know how important it, or what they don't know. So.
Yeah, good questions. Okay, we'll take one more, and then we got to get going.
Yeah, I just want to ask Brittany, how did you get to the church?
That boyfriend in college I was fornicating with. So,
you asked, they're going to answer.
You did, and I'm going to be real. That's another thing. I really appreciated the older, and I'm going to answer your question. I really appreciated the older women being real with me, not just being these perfect Christian ladies, because I was not a perfect anything. I was a hot mess ministries, and so that was what I was. And so I really needed them to be real with me, where they were before and where they are now, and they would even tell me some things that were struggles in their marriage when they first got married, not bashing their husbands, but they were just real. This isn't a perfect thing, But so I always believed that Jesus was my Lord and Savior because God, like I said, God's hand has been on me since I was really little. I was between the ages of 3 and 4, and I had this really elderly woman as my babysitter. And nothing came out of her mouth but Jesus, and it used to annoy me because my mom was 21, and she would kind of let me watch what I wanted. She would tell me, if anybody curses on the TV, we're turning it off, and she was just always singing these songs to me. But I realize now when I struggle, there's this song she would sing to me, and to this day, I sing it to the Lord. And so I always believed. He's got the whole world in his hands. And literally when I'm overwhelmed and I'm things are not going right, I can remember that the Lord has got the whole world in his hands. And it's something so small, but that's never left me. Anyway, so that was only for a short period in my life. So I always believed, but no one ever gave me a Bible. I didn't know you're supposed to read the Bible. My mom gave me one, but it was decoration in the house. And we'd go to church for holidays. However, when I was in college, that boyfriend at the time, his parents were going to Calvary Chapel Inglewood. It was a new church plant. It had been around for about a year, and they just invited me. And I had gone to church with my friends, just visiting churches just because we wanted to do something. And after visiting about 10 different churches prior, I went to that one. And I was like, I don't know what it is about this place, but this is it. And I never left. And he went maybe twice and never again, but I continued to go. And I got discipled, and I went to the women's ministry, and they tackled me, and here I am.
That's amazing. God's like, you're done with this girl, but I'm going to have you drop her off at church before you get on out of her life. Thank these girls. Aren't they going to change the world? Thank you, guys.